Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into a story about a system in total crisis, with some truly mind-boggling numbers and a potential high-tech fix. We are talking about Pakistan's massive electricity overbilling scandal, a problem that hits millions of people and businesses right where it hurts. So let's just jump right in. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at why the whole system is in crisis, which is what makes this whole mess possible in the first place. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the actual tactics used to pump up those bills. After that, we'll see why the official complaint system is, well, basically a dead end. And finally, we'll explore a huge technology gap that actually opens the door for some serious disruption. Okay, so let's set the stage. I want to be clear, this isn't about a few typos or some minor clerical errors. No, we are talking about a full-blown crisis, one that's baked into the very DNA of the country's energy sector. And it comes with a truly jaw-dropping price tag. And here it is, the headline number. An official government audit found 244 billion rupees in overbilling by the country's power companies, which are called DISCOs. To put that in perspective, that's over $870 million US. It is just a staggering amount of money to be systematically overcharged. So this begs the big question, right? Where on earth did all that money go? Was it just lining someone's pockets? Well, the answer is actually a lot more complicated, and it points to a system that's just fundamentally broken. To really get the why here, you have to understand something called the vicious cycle. Think of it like this. The energy sector is basically bleeding cash. You've got old, creaky infrastructure, rampant power theft, and tons of unpaid bills. All this creates these huge financial losses and a mountain of debt, so the DISCOs are under enormous pressure to hide these problems and make their numbers look good on paper, which, you guessed it, leads them to get pretty creative with your bill. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The country's own competition commission calls the sector chaotic. So this isn't some big secret. It's a well-known, well-documented national disaster. The overbilling isn't just random acts of greed. It's a desperate and, illegal attempt to patch up the holes in a sinking ship. All right, so now that we kind of get the motive, desperation, let's move on to the method. How exactly are these companies pulling this off? How are they systematically overcharging millions of their customers? Well, it turns out they've got a whole playbook of tactics. Yup. Investigators have found a whole menu of these things, but these four are the biggest culprits. Each one is cleverly designed to artificially inflate what you owe and to hide the company's own failures. So let's break them down one by one. The first trick is one of the most common, and it's deceptively simple. They just extend the billing cycle. Now, by law, your bill is supposed to cover about 30 days. But what happens when they decide to bill you for, say, 35 days or even 41 days? It doesn't sound like much, but its effect is huge. Now, check this out. This is where it gets really damaging. A customer who uses, say, 190 units in 30 days might be in a protected low-cost category. But if you bill them for 41 days, their usage suddenly jumps to 260 units. Boom. That pushes them into a much higher price bracket, and they lose that protected status. And this isn't a rare thing. This tactic was used on over 13.7 million customers in just 2 months. Okay, next up, we have the detection bill. And this one is just brazen. This is when a DISCO just slaps you with a bill for supposed electricity theft, often with zero proof, simply to make their own stats look better. It's an accounting trick to turn a loss from theft into revenue on their books. And this chart says it all, doesn't it? It shows just how bogus these bills are. In some areas, the collection rate for these detection bills is a pathetic 5 to 6%. That just proves that almost nobody thinks they're legit. It's not about collecting money. It's purely about cooking the books. The real kicker is that it makes honest customers so furious they sometimes stop paying their real bills in protest. Tactic number 3 is what I'd call a sin of omission. Companies are legally required to replace a broken meter pretty quickly, but instead they just don't. They let them stay broken for months, even years, and then they charge you based on some made-up average usage, which is often conveniently high. And the scale of this neglect is just wow. At one point, there were over 400,000 defective meters in the system. Some people were being charged on these shady averages for over 3 years. Come on, this is not an accident. It is intentional neglect that just happens to make the utility company more money. Okay, so the evidence of shady dealings is overwhelming. The obvious question then is, why can't people just complain and get this stuff fixed? And that brings us to the official complaint process itself, which, as you're about to see, is a huge part of the problem. Now, on paper, the process looks fine. It seems orderly. You complain to the company first. If they blow you off, you can take your case to the national regulator, NEPRA. It looks like a clear path to getting things sorted out, right? But the reality is completely different. One analysis calls the process overly complex and bureaucratic. It's intentionally intimidating for an average person. It's a bureaucratic maze of paperwork and procedures that seems almost perfectly designed to make you just throw your hands up and give up. And this is the real kicker. There's a massive enforcement gap. The regulator's own investigation found that, get this, literally not a single one of the country's power companies practices 100% correct billing. The rules exist, but they are completely and universally ignored. This makes the regulator basically a paper tiger with no real teeth to enforce its own rules. So this toxic mix of systemic failure, a broken complaint process, and just being technologically stuck in the past, it creates a really interesting situation. Because wherever there's a vacuum, there's an opportunity. So let's talk about the tech that could fix this, and more importantly, why it isn't being used. The ultimate fix, the technological silver bullet for all of this, is the smart meter. It's a device that records your electricity use in real time and automatically sends that info back to the utility. It gets rid of manual meter readers and makes all those fraudulent tactics we just talked about pretty much impossible. So you'd think Pakistan would be racing to install these, right? Well, take a look at this chart. It tells a pretty stark story. While neighboring India has installed almost 4 million smart meters, Pakistan has barely managed 29,000. It's not just lagging behind, it's in a state of what the source material calls technological stagnation. So why the snail's pace? It's not just typical delays. Sources point to active institutional resistance. Some officials are worried about meter reader jobs, and others have actually called smart meters a luxury good. That kind of thinking guarantees that this old, broken, easy-to-cheat system is going to stick around for a long time. And this is where a totally new kind of solution can step in. An AI-powered auditing service can thrive in this vacuum. It can scan years of your bills to find errors a human would never catch. It can automate that bureaucratic nightmare of a complaint process. And it can give you the hard data you need to actually win your case. Best of all, it can work on a no-win, no-fee model, which for a frustrated business owner sounds pretty good. And that leaves us with this one last really big question to think about. We've seen a system that is fundamentally, maybe even intentionally broken. A system where human-led institutions have completely failed. So in a situation like that, can an algorithm, a piece of code, actually be the one to deliver fairness? It's a fascinating thought about the role of technology in fixing our deepest human problems.
Thanks for watching.